Hello, I am C-3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready. So, let us begin.
There's something not right. I feel cold.
So we pick up where we left off on Dagobah. There's in the midst of Luke's Force training, there is some kind of weird trial in a cave off to the side where Yoda is warning Luke that he need only bring his instinct within. Luke, instead, of course, brings in his weapons, and he meets some kind of strange specter in the form of Darth Vader.
And he fights this weird figment of Darth Vader, and he chops off his head. In the process, the helmet drops to the ground and explodes, exposing his own face in Darth Vader's helmet. And this freaks out Luke in some form of kind of existential way.
Ooh, symbolism. Meanwhile, over on the Imperial Star Destroyer, Darth Vader has recruited a league of extraordinary bounty hunters, all very grisly looking, to track down Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon in general. He has also instructed his troops to search for the Falcon as well, and Admiral Nita is kind of manning that operation, but it's not going very well.
And so Captain Solo decides, because one part of his ship isn't working, that he is going to just attach himself to the side of the Star Destroyer, because that's the only way he can think of evading the just inevitable capture, and then exits the scene by getting away in amongst the other garbage. So the hunk of junk really becomes a hunk of junk.
And Captain Nita has to go face Vader as he said he would, and this, of course, results in him getting choked to death, as is always the case when you disappoint Lord Vader. So he hires a new guy, and they decide that the best place to seek refuge and also repair the Falcon is Cloud City, and with this mysterious guy named Lando.
Yes, and so back on Dagobah, Luke is lifting some rocks and some crates, and Yoda's getting frustrated with him. We go back to our other friends on Cloud City, and they get to meet this character Lando, and Lando seems upset at first to see them, but then we quickly learn that he's happy to see Han.
And how perfect is it that the podcast has lined up such that we are meeting Lando for the first time in our reviewing of the movies, just as the movie Solo is hitting theaters in a couple of days, and Lando Calrissian is becoming this pop cultural icon again. We get this incredible description of who the character is.
This is interesting. Lando.
Lando's system?
Lando's not a system, he's a man. Lando Calrissian. He's a card player, gambler. Scoundrel, you'd like him.
Yeah, no, it really is well timed for this certain kind of scenario that we're in right now, where we're able to kind of really see Lando and Han seeing each other after a while. Their dialogue means a little bit more, kind of the back and forth. Han's wondering, well, is he still going to be pissed off at me? And so it kind of lets you to believe like maybe they didn't feel like end off in the best circumstances. The card game with the Falcon, maybe that was the last time they saw each other. Maybe it wasn't. And maybe things were a little bit sour even beyond that point. Who knows? But yeah, definitely well timed.
Well, there are some like direct references to some kind of very specific altercation that Han and Lando must have had. Now, whether or not this movie Solo is going to address those specifically, I mean, it kind of seems like they want to do that. But like when Han says a line like, he's got no love for the Empire, I can tell you that. Like, that's so compelling. I want to see that unpacked. I want to know more about what that means.
I just see that as him being a smuggler and someone who is a rebel at heart and isn't necessarily going to be like remotely having a problem with, I guess, harboring fugitives of the Empire. I think that's kind of more of where I see it from. I don't necessarily see it as, oh, Lando has major hate on for the Empire, although I'm sure he would. But that's
no, I disagree.
I didn't see it that way. That's not how I interpreted it.
I really saw it as this is personal. It felt personal to me.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, one thing we didn't mention in the summary, as what I was ready to say, was the X-wing. And so after Yoda and Luke they lift the rocks and the boxes, then Yoda lifts an X-wing out of the swamp.
Yeah, I think the MVP of that moment was John Williams.
Yeah. But let's face it, John Williams is the MVP of a lot of moments with Star Wars.
It really stood out to me more so than usual, and I don't discredit John Williams at all, but part of the score is that it blends in, and in that particular moment, all I could think was, this crescendo is spectacular. The moment itself had to be mesmerizing for fans, like, because that's I keep saying this week after week, like, oh, this is the first time we've seen the Force do that. This is the first time we've seen the Force do this. It does feel like a new thing each time, and that particular one especially so.
Well, that's the case, though. The thing is, the Force is constantly changing. We see it do something new in literally every single movie, except for maybe Solo, because we haven't seen Solo yet, but that will be different very, very soon. But that's the way it goes. Just because The Last Jedi had kind of a big change, a lot of people were kind of against that. But I think overall, the Force is constantly changing, and this is one of those huge milestones, one of the huge steps where you see the Force, you're able to grab a lightsaber from a foot or so away. You're able to choke a guy out from a distance. You're able to, shoot and blow up this giant space station that looks like a moon just by using your senses as opposed to machines. But this is something that's physically just like a spectacle to see. It's just mesmerizing to look at. So
I wonder if you had the same instinct as I when, previous to the lifting of the X-Wing fighter, Luke says something about how, he says, Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different. And he's talking about how stones are so much smaller than the X-Wing. Does it occur to you that moving around stones is exactly Rey's big Force moment in The Last Jedi?
Well, yeah, specifically. Oh, definitely. Because
it's funny because he's just talking about moving around stones as kind of trivial and like that's low rent and not a big deal. Like that's one thing, but like Rey moving around stones is no small deal.
Well, no, that's true, I guess, because it's a lot of stones and it's at a key time. But no, they make fun of it in The Last Jedi about how moving rocks isn't that really a big deal, and but that is part of like kind of the Force training, and Luke mocks that a bit, or Luke or Rey, one or two, or both of them. But no, it's definitely meant to be paralleled there. And there's also the really great parallels of the X-Wing and how you just assume that when Luke returns that he raised the X-Wing out of the water. And we're like, oh, how come we don't get to see that? Well, it's because he didn't actually do it. He's still back on Octu. But there are definitely some great parallels between The Last Jedi and Empire, and more than I actually thought after seeing The Last Jedi a bunch of times recently and analyzing Empire so closely this time.
You've been studying The Last Jedi?
Well, yeah, The Last Jedi, I absolutely loved it. I say it's one of my favorites, but they're all right up there. But I know it's so ridiculous. But no, The Last Jedi has for me some of the greatest moments in all of Star Wars. So as an overall movie, I would put it probably around 4th or 5th. But when it comes to top Star Wars moments, it may have like 3 of the top 10 Star Wars moments. So like it definitely has some a special place for me, and I do love the parallels between it and Empire, and there's more and more. Just watching them in 20s has really allowed me to see some of the deeper parallels. It's nice.
And isn't it interesting that Last Jedi is easily one of the more polarizing of Star Wars movies, and Empire Strikes Back is by and large the most popular critically of all the Star Wars movies, and they share so many sequences in common.
Well, Empire Strikes Back, it's not like I can say I was alive back then, but it wasn't as like golden as it is today when it first released. Yes, it was considered a successful sequel. It was well liked, obviously, but it wasn't considered like, holy shit, this is like a Godfather Part 2 sort of moment, obviously, but you know what I mean in terms of like right away, it's like this is something that's even better than the first one we got. The jury was still out on it, and that's the reason why I want to keep the jury out on The Last Jedi, because it has so many amazing moments that I think, with the help of Episode 9, kind of wrapping up the saga and the trilogy itself, I think Episode 8 is going to age really, really well.
I think so too, but I find it hard to imagine, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I just find it impossible to imagine that Empire Strikes Back wasn't immediately lauded, because it had all of the spectacular visuals of its predecessor, which melted minds, but it looked that much better. It had, a way bigger budget, and it was written by a professional.
Yeah, but it's about what changes to what you know. And at that point, all it was additions to something that people already loved. And so, of course, you're going to have people who are going to revolt. And you didn't have the same sort of forms and mediums. And like I said, I wasn't alive. But the whole point is, when you have a sequel to one movie, it's very, very different than having a sequel to like 8 other movies or 7 other movies in part of like a series. And I think The Last Jedi needs time before people can judge it. That's my main point I'm going for.
So I think this is one of the more artful 20s in all of Star Wars. I remember being a kid and watching this thing where he goes into the cave and Vader is there, and then it's really Luke and he gets decapitated. When I was a little kid, that went way over my head. And
oh, yeah.
Even still, I'm not sure I totally have a perfect understanding of what's going on in there.
No, and I don't even really either. It's one of those kind of just sort of meta moments where you just kind of have to assume it's relying on, like, it's like a cautionary tale, like, don't go down the dark path. It's like going into a dark cave. He's seeing someone who he could turn into. This is the path of fear leading to anger leading to hate. So I definitely think that it's just the cautionary tale sort of moment, and it's not lost on the fact that afterwards Luke develops even more and then has the fight with Vader specifically. It adds a little bit more weight to the fact of the obsession and the potential for him turning to the dark side in the end.
No, I get the whole thing about how if you use your aggression, it's going to make you dark, the way Vader is dark. I see the parallel there, but is it more literal than that? Like, is this an allusion to the fact that Luke and Vader are one and the same? Like the fact that, I mean, because really, Luke has had no interactions with Vader thus far, and we haven't had Vader try and recruit Luke yet. That's yet to happen. So is this setting us up for the interchanges they're about to have in 40 minutes time? Like,
I think so, yeah. I know what you mean. The big thing here, I see it as it's a trial of the Force. That's really all it is that the Force is deciding, okay, this is something that Luke needs to get past, and because Dagobah is a Force nexus, it's strong with the dark side, and so it makes sense for the experience of the Force vision, or however you want to call it, that Luke experiences to be very dark and dire. But I just see it as like foreshadowing for the fight that we're about to see, and how he's going to learn that he has Vader in him. But I think, it's just that cautionary tale of this is what you have inside of you, and you could become this one day. But I think that's just more of kind of like a Jedi lesson, and the fact that it happens on Dagobah, that's why it's got such a dark side and dark vibe to it.
And as usual, Yoda is always correct. I mean, he tells Luke to go into the cave unarmed. I'm not sure what Luke would have done if he met face to face with Vader unarmed.
No idea.
Even if it's just a simulation, I don't know if it would have been different. Like if he didn't bring his weapons into the cave, would he not have come face to face with a Vader simulation? I don't know. But he disobeys Yoda and he brings his weapons, and then shortly thereafter, Yoda advises he not leave. He has to stay and finish his training first. And sure enough, Luke leaves for good intentions. He knows he has to help his friends, but he leaves against Yoda's recommendations, and he fights Vader against Yoda's recommendations from a place of aggression and anger, and he loses that fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely kind of going along those lines, and I think Yoda in that circumstance, because the future, it's always clouded, just sees the fact that, Luke's going to get annihilated by Vader if he has to go up against him. So he would just hope that, Yoda's not going to bank on Vader showing him mercy. Let me put it that way. So
right.
the thought of him going after, it is a suicide mission in Yoda's mind, I think. That's how he sees it.
What does Luke mean when he says, there's something wrong, I feel cold? When he feels cold, is this like... This is a very rare example of a time where we hear some kind of physiological, tactile description of what a force sensation is.
That's a good point.
And I think it's a bad inkling. It's like it's not a good Spidey sense.
No, what's really funny is in The Last Jedi, the way Luke mocks Rey with like the leaf thing. And you just like reach out with the force, and then she reaches out with her hands, and so he gets back at her by literally just touching her hand with the leaf. Oh, I feel it! I think that's just kind of funny in the sense where Luke right here literally feels the force. It's not something to really be made fun of. No one makes fun of this moment. But yeah, I guess it's just the cold of evil, and the force kind of just sneaking up on him.
So in terms of quotes for this 20, we have two extremely quotable characters who are fleeting members of the Star Wars family. They're not really reoccurring, Yoda and Lando, but both of them say a lot of great things and in very different ways.
They sure do. There's a lot of really great Yoda ones. That place is strong with the dark side of the force. A domain of evil it is. In you must go.
Is he talking about those force nexuses you keep bringing up? Does he mean specifically this cave is strong with the force?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so Dagobah as an overall is strong with the force, but this specific area, it's like kind of that cave in Octu, that cave that Rey ends up in, where she looks into the mirror of a million versions of her.
That's another example of how The Last Jedi mirrors the artfulness of Empire Strikes Back. There's this weird, like, kind of symbolic, confusing, almost trippy sequence in the middle of the person's training.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be kind of like one of those eye-opening key points. I really thought she was going to have to face something down there, because, I mean, Luke had to face kind of a theoretical Vader. I expected her to I actually thought she was going to end up facing a real monster down there. Right. So I was a little disappointed with that scene in The Last Jedi, just because I was so expecting a sea monster. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was still a cool scene, and it led well into the scenes with Kylo, adding extra emotion there.
Now, we did hear our essential Yoda quote in this 20.
Yes.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
He had a couple of other quotes that are I love this one because it's wise, but it's also adorable. And it's when Luke is arguing over the size of the X-Wing is too much for him to lift using the Force. He says, size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's one that is just like, seriously, how cynical do you have to be? And in the circumstance, that's all Yoda sees. He just sees this hot-headed person who just cannot be patient, and that's all you need to be. There's a few other great ones. Only what you take with you from Yoda. Your weapons, you will not need them. Just like such calm, great lines. No different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yeah, I think I really sat with that quote for a few minutes too. You must unlearn what you have learned, because like that is really describing how the Force is a totally other plane. Like, stop trying to understand it with your current brain. Let's start at zero.
It's funny because for me, all I see with that is beginner's mind. It's a concept in entrepreneurship where you have to essentially unlearn what you have learned. And I always like the parallel with that. Easy way to remember it for tests.
Yoda also has a really intense monologue where he again describes what the Force is. And this isn't the first time the viewer is learning what the Force is, but it's nice to hear it reinforced by somebody so brilliant.
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you.
I loved him talking about human flesh as crude matter.
Oh, I know, man. And just like poking at Luke, and it's everything that comes out of his mouth is gold. And the line right after, like the back and forth, is, I don't believe it. And Luke, that is why you fail.
That is why you fail.
Yoda, that's why you fail. Yeah.
Oh, it's so dark and heavy.
But it's so true. It just goes back on the fact that Luke's pessimism and his inability to forget everything that he's learned. It's the one thing that holds him back. And I guess letting go, and the fact that he goes after his friends as opposed to just letting things go their natural course. Yoda doesn't expect him to come back from it, but fortunately he does. That's why he's the greatest.
But it kind of seems like Yoda's solution is never interfere, and I don't know if that's heroic.
No, I wouldn't say it's necessarily heroic either. I think Yoda views it as, I remember when we interfered way, way, way too much a few decades back, and look what happened.
Right.
So I think that's partially where it is. It's a bit of a cautionary, and he sees, well, Luke is potentially the last opportunity, and if he's telling me right now that Leia is gonna die right now unless he goes and saves her, well, I don't want him to go and save her, because then there's literally no hope left. And under those circumstances, if he goes off, then great, the Jedi are absolutely gone. But if he can stay here, there's a chance the Jedi can survive, and they can stay out of this war, and then live on beyond that. And so I think it's a preservation tactic as well for Yoda, as he knows that it's Luke's last opportunity. It really is.
Now, when Luke marches off all pissy pants, you ask the impossible. He can't possibly lift the X-Wing out of the swamp. And then Yoda, of course, proves that you can by doing it. Is it really the best storytelling to have him prove the importance of faith by showing that it can be done? Like, he needs to demonstrate to Luke that it can be done, which is not really the faith of which he speaks in reference to the Force.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, but I think that's the whole thing, is Yoda's just saying to him, if you were ready, you would have been able to lift it out yourself. And the fact that Yoda has to do it for him, it's him reluctantly doing it, but saying but the fact that I'm doing this, kid, is purely proof that you should not be going. You aren't ready to leave. And so that's really, I see it as a moment of just defeated disappointment as a teacher from Yoda, where he's obviously willing to do it because Luke's made his final decision, but he knows that it's not good for Luke's learning in the long run.
Now, all of that monologuing that is eloquent and careful and at times poetic. On the other hand, we have quotes like, "You slimy, double-crossing, no-good swindler," from Lando to Han Solo, faking him out.
You've got a lot of guts coming here after what you pulled. I mean,
what did he pull?
I know. Well, and then he calls him "you old pirate." I love that line. How you doing, you old pirate? That's one of my favorite lines. It's so just smoothie, as Han would call Lando, "you old smoothie."
Hello, what have we here? Welcome, I'm Lando Calrissian. I'm the administrator of this facility. And who might you be?
Leia.
Welcome, Leia.
All right. You old smoothie.
Now, is Leia warm to Lando at first? I mean, she's a little bit skeptical of him, and then later on she finds him to be completely obnoxious. But in this moment where 3PO says he seems quite friendly, and she's like, yeah, is she willing to like Lando?
I see it more as she just sees another Han Solo. She's just like, oh shit, seriously, of course his friend is just him, but with a cape. And and more extravagant and flamboyant.
Right.
And I think that's just the way she sees it. It's another no good, half-witted, except not scruffy looking.
No.
Very smooth and suave looking.
Very pretty boy. But he was initially described, and I kind of forgot that the very first description of Lando was that he was a gambler.
Mm-hmm.
And then they later talk about how he won the Falcon from Lando fair and square. Like, it's pretty clear that it was gambling that exchanged this ship.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think they even say it at some point directly, that it's acquired from a game of cards. I think we even talked about that at one point, so yeah. There's another great one. That ship saved my life quite a few times. She's the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy.
Now, it's kind of interesting because, I know we see in Solo trailers the odd still of how when Lando owned the ship, it was much more pimped up and much more swag. But on the outside, a Falcon is a Falcon, and it doesn't, other than the fact that it's indefensibly fast and a great piece of machinery, it's not the sports car that you expect of Lando Calrissian.
No, that's fair. It's interestingly more of, I guess, like a luxury vehicle, or not even really, more like a Hummer, one that has luxury features, but is built like a beast. Isn't built to look pretty, but is built to get the job done.
Right, and he was a smuggler himself.
Yeah, so I mean, he was able to make it as pretty as possible, but he still needed the cargo space to be able to make the money to even afford the Falcon.
Now, I want to talk about either Captain or Admiral Nita, who, as soon as he says,
I shall assume full responsibility for losing them and apologize to Lord Vader. Meanwhile, continue to scan the area.
I think I said out loud, oh boy. Like,
Oh, yeah.
How does he not know where this is leading?
I really don't know. I think he's just trying to be, brave and thinks he can have a conversation that's remotely reasonable with Vader, even though that's just straight up not happening.
Yeah. I found the guy who succeeded him to look too much like him. Like, I was confused. Like, wait a second, didn't he just kill that guy?
That's, I think, supposed to be the point. The fact that they're just
interchangeable.
They're just dispendable. They're interchangeable. There's a different one. They change their ranking mid-sentence because they kill one of them. I mean, they're like green toy soldiers almost.
Now, what do you think of Cloud City? Do you have a fondness for Cloud City?
I do, but before that, I wanted to ask you specifically a trivia question.
Okay.
So for a Padawan question, we can exchange those now. What does Lando mine?
Oh, shoot. I mean, some kind of gas. That's all I can say.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's Tabana gas.
What is Tabana gas?
I don't know. Some kind of gas.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you my Padawan question. What part of the galaxy are Han and Leia and the rest of the crew in when they set their flight path for Bespin?
They are in the Anoat system.
The Anoat system, and I had to look up how to spell it. So you just know that from memory because you're a genius.
No, just because it's... Well, no, when you watch something in 20-minute increments, you're able to really pick up the small details.
Well, a lot of stuff is really, really mumbled in these movies, I find.
Yeah, but I find, like, if you've seen it so many times and you're able to kind of listen closer on the lines that you maybe don't know what they're going to say next...
Right.
Because you're so able to frequently be able to say what they're going to say next.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier to pick out the ones that are new to you or the ones that are, I guess, more trivia-based kind of style questions because you either know them off by heart or you're like, oh, I wonder what they're going to say next.
You already kind of touched on what my night question is, which has to do with how they escape via the garbage disposal by the Empire. I did find it hilarious phraseology that Han was like, assuming they follow standard Imperial procedures before going to lightspeed, they'll have to dump their garbage and we'll just float away. I just found that to be so silly.
Well, he was an Imperial, so I guess he would know that, but it was a little weird the way he said it.
No, I didn't have a problem with it at all. I just found it funny, like to think that the Empire, this big haunting force, this military that is constantly trying to kill all our heroes, has like an instated garbage disposal policy. It's just so silly.
It is kind of funny when Darth Vader has his like meditation chamber rules and there's the garbage policy, and I'm sure they have a green policy on the Death Star to make sure that they recycle.
And hey, this is kind of some Imperial garbage system redemption for Han and Leia and Chewie, because involving themselves with the garbage system on the Death Star was a huge no-no in the previous movie, but it worked this time.
It did. It definitely worked in their favor here. I'm sure that was intentional.
Tell me about how you feel about Bespin.
Bespin, I mean, I've never had a huge love for Bespin in Cloud City. I always just, because the hallways were pretty boring. The giant pit that Luke and Vader fight over, that Luke slides down, is awesome. That is super cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that's really the only part that I really loved about Bespin and Cloud City. I mean, in theory, it's really cool, but we don't get to see enough of it. I mean, if we got to see more of it, maybe, but it's kind of like a small, higher in the sky Coruscant. So,
well, exactly. And in fact, I think this is the first time we've seen any kind of territory in Star Wars that isn't a wasteland.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Good point. Other than the Death Star, which is the size of a small moon. But yeah, that's a good point.
And it's a man-made. It's a space station. Like, this is the first civilized territory.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's really interesting.
I was always really, really fond of Cloud City. I just thought the idea of it's really cool. And it's also very clean. Like, it looks like a hotel or like some kind of weird rehab, because it's just everything is like really perfect and pretty. Although I did find one thing I had to bring back to the drawing board is like the Cloud City skyline when they're loading onto the dock.
Oh yeah.
It just looks very corny. It looks like the skyline of Metropolis in a Superman cartoon. Like it's very cheap.
Yeah, no, that's I believe probably digitally enhanced in the re-release by George Lucas in the late 90s.
Right.
They did a lot of updates on Cloud City to make it look more in line with what they were doing for the prequels. So it definitely worked well in that regard. I think the big reason why I didn't like Cloud City or Bespin as much as maybe some of the other places is because of how much I loved Hoth and how much I love Yoda. And so it was just, I guess, maybe just my least favorite part of the movie, which I know is weird to think about. But besides like the parts that you don't even think of as being Bespin, like the battle itself between Luke and Vader, and the scene where they freeze Han, I mean, you almost forget that it's in Bespin. So that's really the best.
I totally disagree. Like I find that it's so easy to split up Empire Strikes Back into those 3 different territories, and I find they just gel so well because they're all so different.
I agree, but the main reason why I don't know why I find it so hard is because the severe distinction between the area where Luke and Vader fight and where Han's frozen and where Lando greets them, it's like they're just like not even in the same place.
Right.
I see it. There's kind of a divide there for me. That's, I guess, maybe the only reason why it's never resonated that much with me, because we just don't see enough of the outside of it.
Speaking of where Lando greets them, my Jedi Master question for you is, what Cloud City platform is the Falcon granted access to?
327.
Oh my God, do you anticipate what my questions are going to be?
Partially, but that is one that's just a standard practice, good to know Star Wars trivia question.
Just because it's a number.
Yeah, that one and 3,720 to 1.
Everyone would know those.
Well, no, you asked me that one last week or something, or 2 weeks ago, and you were like, "How did you remember that?" I was like, "Well, same reason." I have a Knight and a Master one for you here as well. So, what was the one line from Boba Fett in this 20?
I believe the only thing he says is "as you wish."
As you wish.
That is correct. Good answer.
So Vader is kind of lecturing all of the bounty hunters and basically saying, by all means, find me the Millennium Falcon. Do whatever it takes. The only catch is I want them alive. And then he specifically turns to Boba Fett and he says, that means no disintegrations. Which you have said, some people have speculated, refers to the death of the Larzas, which has been disproven.
Yes, correct.
Just more loosely, the fact that he loves to blowtorch people, I guess.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. Is the fact that the Lars homestead is so clearly just disintegrated and torched, and Boba Fett can often use a flamethrower. So, I mean, there's the opportunity, and with a jetpack and the flames, so there was the potential, but that has been disproven.
He actually is very cool in this, and they do show him in the cockpit of Slave One for the briefest second.
Yeah, no, that was actually one thing I had as a take back for this 20 is how bad of a pilot Han would have to be to not notice Boba Fett right fucking behind him.
He's not.
He is right behind him. He doesn't even pause for a second after he gets away from the garbage. I mean, he's just on his ass.
And Slave One is not exactly a Honda Civic. It looks kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got the gull wing doors. It's an odd looking ship.
I finally got one of your questions. Thank God.
Yeah, and you got my Knight level question too. That was pretty good.
I got the As You Wish thing because I happen to love the Princess Bride.
Well, that was the exact reason as to why I picked it. Because I was like, if you get this, that'll be awesome and appropriate. And if you don't, you're going to feel terrible.
Yeah, I would have.
What was the lizard species seen in the Dark Side Cave on Dagobah?
I don't know. An iguana.
Yeah, it's called a sleen. I'm just screwing with you. I'll give you my real master question. Okay. And this is still one that's very reasonable, but also potentially not that easy. Name 3 of the bounty hunters seen in the bounty hunter scene.
I couldn't possibly.
No? Okay.
No, I don't even think any of them really looked familiar.
Yeah, so I knew 3 of them. That's why I asked you to do 3, and I looked up the rest. And so there's Dengar. He's the guy who looks like he's got a sock with a hole on it on his head.
Yeah.
There's IG-88, which is kind of the can-shaped head droid. He was one of the ones I knew. Boba Fett as well, obviously, and Bosk, who has a long history of working with or against Boba Fett. And then Forlom is the other droid, and then Zuckuss is the one with the bug head.
Zuckuss.
I know, it's a terrible name.
I recognize IG-88.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Bosk is annoying as hell from the Clone Wars. So.
Do you have any other observations about this 20? I mean, a lot's hitting the fan now.
Not too many. I'm trying to look and see if there's any kind of lost quotes. There's a good one from Leia. You do have your moments, not many, but you have them.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that was good.
She even gave him a little kiss after she said that.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a smile, as much as he could in there.
He's a bit of a nerd in this clip, I find.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. He's like, I can't figure out, like, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not my fault.
Yeah, he says it's not my fault. He also says that's not fair when the Falcon's malfunctioning.
It's not my fault. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. No, I think
he's out of his element.
Yeah, I think actually that's it that I have for the 20.
Okay, so what do we want to say before Solo, which this is going to come out on Thursday, which means we'll be like 36 hours away from seeing the movie because we bought our tickets. We're so excited.
Yeah, we've had some technical issues lately in the last little bit, so we haven't done news for a while. But when it comes to Solo, there's a little bit out there in the news.
No, Emilia Clarke was on Jimmy Fallon, and she kind of alluded to the fact that she and the Han Solo character are buddies at the beginning, which we knew. And then she pretty much out and says, and then I disappear for a little while, and I come back and I am different.
Yeah, well, that seems to be what we've gotten from the trailers, is that she's with Dryden Voss in some capacity. She works for him. She's potentially there's a romantic relationship there. We don't really know. But then there's also flashes that are so clearly when they're younger, when Han's driving in a speeder on Corellia, and he's got the gold dice hanging over the mirror, and Emilia Clarke's in the passenger seat. And so that was clearly when they're younger. And so it's interesting to see, like, maybe when she'll be reintroduced. Like, maybe we get, like, the first 20 minutes, and it's kind of those two. And then it skips ahead a little bit, and it's as Han meets Woody Harrelson and Tandy Newton, and then Lando, and then maybe Emilia Clarke gets introduced then. So maybe something like that happens again later on.
So the gold dice that you just mentioned, the inclusion of those as a prop in The Last Jedi was strictly to service the coming Solo movie, right? Like, we had never really seen or heard of those before?
No. So they were in A New Hope, and just like kind of hanging at the top of the Falcon as well. So they've been around since the very beginning.
Wow.
But yeah, and so that was something that was just like something that Luke brings back as kind of like a reminder from where it all started for Leia, but also as something that clearly means a lot to Han, that he hangs it in different places that he's like running the ship on. And Kylo, it was something that he was able to have kind of that emotional moment with. But yeah, it's used as a bit of a plot device to connect to Solo as well, and as a refresher of this item. But I don't think necessarily that Rian Johnson used it for anything other than he wanted to use it, and then they thought, oh, well, we're making the Solo movie, let's find some consistencies here.
Yeah, but you think that this little device that is connecting like everybody symbolically and is bringing all these insanely powerful emotions out of all of the biggest characters in Star Wars was inspired by Kira?
No. What I'm saying is I believe that it was brought back and kind of brought into light again from The Last Jedi and not from Solo. That's all I'm saying.
No, I know, I understand, but what I'm saying is they're going to create an origin story for this little trinket that is Kira gave Han Solo these golden dice, and they end up being like incredibly sentimental to every character in Star Wars?
Oh, no, we don't know that. I mean, there's potential, but we know that at the start of this movie, or near the start of this movie, Han will have the dice, and he knows Kira, because clearly they go way back. But no, it looks like Han has the dice. It's just that he places them on like the rearview mirror of the speeder that he's in, and then he places them again in the Falcon. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be related to Kira.
Give me like a really bold prediction for Solo. Something that you're willing to admit you do not think this will happen, but you know there's a 0.1 chance that it could happen, and it would be a stunner if it did.
Oh, that's a really good question. Do you have one?
Not really. No, I just know that you're much more schooled in some of the anticipatory forums.
Oh, yeah. I mean, something that could be really cool would be as if we got a bounty hunter from like the Clone Wars. Like if we got Cad Bane. Now I don't know if you know who Cad Bane is, but he's easily one of the coolest characters in Star Wars. He's this blue-faced. I don't even know quite what his species is, but he's this bounty hunter, and he's just a complete and utter badass. But I don't think the timelines work because I don't know. I don't know whether he's canon still alive. There was going to be an episode of the Clone Wars where Boba Fett was going to kill him, but they never aired that episode. So his kind of position canon-wise is up in the air as to whether he's dead or alive. He was, without a doubt, one of the biggest fan favorites introduced in the Clone Wars TV show. So if he came back, that would be insanely cool, but there's such a low possibility. Also, Hondo. Hondo, I friggin' love. He's this pirate from the Clone Wars and Rebels. He's just this absolute charming, talks out his ass, lies to you, stabs you in the back, and then tells you you're his best friend to the face kind of character. Hondo is awesome. I would love it if Hondo made his way into this movie.
So he's a sleazy scumbag, and his name is both Han and Lando.
Oh my God, I've never in my life. Oh my God, I've not made that connection, Colin. Oh, you blew my mind right now.
It's a little cheesy. Like that must be an accident.
Well, he's not a human. I don't know quite what species he is. Just all the pirates look like him for some reason, whatever species they are.
What is the over under for seeing Boba Fett in this movie?
Well, what over under do we want to go with? What would you say? Over under 20%. Boba Fett in the movie. Oh, no, sorry, 10%. Do you think there's a less than 10% chance or a more than 10% chance?
No, I think there's a more than 10% chance for sure.
Oh, I think there's less.
Really?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put it that high.
I think that they would love to get that fan service out there just to rid the world of their needing to be just this like nattering voice out there that says there should be a Boba Fett origin story.
Yeah, I know. I guess so.
It's easy.
I don't know. I don't know when there would be a place to put it in. I mean, unless they're all going for the same bounty. But
you know, Jabba the Hutt's in this movie.
Well, we don't know for sure. It was said that there was it seemed to be a leak, but then nothing really happened of that again. I still think we will see Jabba the Hutt, but I don't know if that necessarily means Boba Fett will be in it. I don't think Boba Fett's going to be in the movie.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a popular idea, but there's a big part of me that wants the end, even if it's post-credits, which I know they haven't done before, wants the end to be Han and Chewie arriving in Mos Eisley.
Yeah, no, that you've mentioned this before, and I think that really could be cool. You have to do it in the right sort of way, but under certain circumstances, I could be okay with it. But it would have to be the sort of thing where it was, like you said, like not an after-credits scene, but something where it's very clearly like a down the road. I don't want to see it like leading right up into that point, like where everything's happening right before. But if they just like the screen went black and you thought it was the end of the movie and then it came back for like another 10-second clip or 20-second clip leading into Mos Eisley, that would be super cool.
Kathleen Kennedy's commented on some of the request and demand for a Lando standalone movie.
Oh, yeah.
And you and I were discussing this a little bit. She basically said, look, there's no plan for that, but we don't want to close the door on it.
Oh, yeah. She was also misquoted by someone. I forget what the media outlet was that misquoted her, but she was misquoted as to saying the Lando movie would be the next movie they were going to do.
Oh, no.
And yeah, the next standalone. And so she really had to kind of backpedal over the last little bit and be like, no, not what I meant. Just a little bit of miscommunication.
You still think that's going to be a Kenobi movie?
I think there's a decent chance. I mean, I want it to be the Kenobi movie, but at this point, I mean, we just have to friggin' know. Just tell us. I mean, we're going to get whatever Episode 9 is in 2019, and in 2020, we're going to get some movie. So please tell us what that will be. It's pretty soon now.
Well, and I don't want to be influenced by the chat rooms. Like, I don't want to live in a world where the outragey, complainy Star Wars fan on the internet gets to decide what Lucasfilm does next, because if they don't follow suit, they'll have a hissy fit, because that is the way of the Star Wars fan. But I just don't see a risk in doing another Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan movie. I think that is something universally cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's a risk at all. It's one that, I mean, if it was bad, it would be ultimately not good for Star Wars. But everybody's going to go in wanting it to be so damn amazing that I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to not have at least pretty decent reviews and then ultimately make an insane amount of money. So everybody should end up really happy, and why would they not do that then? Ewan McGregor makes a ton of money, they make a ton of money, the fans are happy. Literally, why not?
Exactly.
I guess a couple other things in the news, because we haven't done news a ton lately. We do know that the Jon Favreau TV show will be taking place 7 years after the Battle of Yavin, so about 3 or so years after the Battle of Endor. So that's cool. It'll be really interesting to kind of see the timeline in there. I know you and I were chatting a little bit, and I think I would love to see a third side of the law kind of vibe to this TV show, one with maybe bounty hunters, sort of the smuggling crowd like we have in Solo upcoming here. But I don't want to see kind of the both sides of it, where you have like your Empire and your Rebellion or New Republic. I want to see kind of the gray side of the Star Wars universe in this TV show.
Totally. And like, exactly what is the underbelly that is going to erode at the peace that supposedly existed post Return of the Jedi? Because we are in, at least in that era, a totally unfamiliar political dynamic in the galaxy far, far away, and one that is kind of a breeding ground for more undercover sleaziness.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there was the video game Star Wars 1313, and that was going to be about level 1313 of Coruscant, which was kind of the rough and tumbling, dark, and the dingy, where like the sleaziest and the most illegal things happened in the Star Wars universe. And so that was good. That was a really cool concept for a game, and there's a lot of potential lore around that kind of underbelly culture. And I know Lucas was also planning a TV show around that same sort of underbelly of Coruscant. So I think if you kind of return to that similar model and make it a little bit later, making it in this new time era, I think it could be really cool. It's also a way to keep the budget in check a little bit, because you don't necessarily need to have insane like space travel. It can be a lot of like more of a dialogue-driven Star Wars, but obviously needs to have a decent amount of action, of course. But one that can be a little bit more based on like characters and dialogue, and insert like within planet action, as opposed to like, oh, we're on Tatooine now, we'll end up on Endor by the end of the day. Who knows? So something like that.
All right, I think we'll call it there. We're going to go see Solo this weekend. When we come back next week, what do you think? Should we talk about Solo spoilers in the podcast?
Ooh, that's a good question.
It'll all be explained in the notes of the podcast.
Sounds like a plan.
Best case scenario is everybody just goes to see the movie this weekend, so we don't have a problem, because assuming you're listening to this podcast, you're a big old Star Wars fan. Yeah,
that would definitely be the ideal. And maybe, who knows, maybe we will go with full spoilers next week. It's to be determined.
In the meantime, if you want to send feedback to Recorder66, you can tweet us at Recorder66, or you can email Recorder66podcast@gmail.com. Also, if you're listening to us on iTunes, give us a little rate and review. Give us the max amount of stars, because that's how we slip into the charts, and other people will find the podcast, and that makes this more fun for everybody. And enjoy your viewing of Solo.
It's gonna be a fun ride, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
All right, man. You know what to say.
All right. May the Force be with you.